this new video we're actually looking at the last session we were looking at, which is session 5, and moving on to session 6. If we have a look at the session 5, then we were able to connect all the pages up so that the add contact actually takes us to the add contact, view contacts takes us back to the home page, edit load up, and the delete loads up for each instance, so we can see that Mr. Mickey Mouse has loaded up effectively there. And if we went to delete Mr. Donald Duck, then we can see, oh, that's pulled up the wrong record, but that's right, we expect that because of course all it's doing at the moment is loading up an empty file. What we want to do is change this very slightly. If we have a look here, then the difference is minimal. If I go to the odd contact sheet, same view. If I go to the edit, same view. And if I go to delete, we'll go to delete straight away to Mr. Donald Duck. And again, it's simply text, it's all already up there. So nothing seems to have changed between contact 5 and contact 6. But here's the difference. I'm going to go to add contact now. And I'm going to select, you can see I've done this before. And I don't really care about the number. Add contact. Whereas previously none of the pages worked, now the add page is actually adding someone new to the system. And the statement is obviously, how are we doing that? Well, I'm now looking at the structure I've got with all my files. There's all my websites that are working. For here we were on session 5. We've gone to session 6 and it's now under pages. It's the add page that I'm looking at editing. Here is the add page that we created long time ago, and this is the one that still exists in session 5. I can see that because at the top here at Notepad++ is session_5, so that tells me that's session 5. This one here is session 6, and you can see that by the pop-up, but I'm going to click onto there and you can see that actually lower down is exactly the same content. I can make up new words if I wish to. That's not a new word. It already exists. Anyway, and you can see here this is added. The only other thing that has changed is this line. Choose the right line, that might be quite helpful. The form line there. If we have a look at this first, this is an important side of the whole system. The form was given the name add. That simply tells us that this whole form is called add, and we give it a name that we know we can deal with. We tell it the method. Now if you remember, when we were trying to pass parameters, we used the get statement to collect data that was given in the command line. So when we were selecting items at the top, when we clicked on add contact, it sent commands through here, and this was the get process. We're now using something called the post system. And the other part to this is the action, and when we first started off we had no action, which meant if we clicked on the button, if we clicked on the submit button that appears down here, it goes to this line, it goes, what do you want me to do? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Yes. Sorry, a bit of a song popping out there. You can see that, obviously not with any musical notes to it attached to it, you can see here that I've changed the action. What I've done here is I'm using a get statement, in fact, and I've said index.php question mark. So the question mark says following a get statements, the act, short for action, is equal to add, and func, short for function, not some form of flashy dance, equals save. So how does that process the command? Well, what happens is when you click on the select button, the thing it does is it loads the index page again, so it loads the home page. It loads this page, and your system, the server, will run this because it's a PHP file. It will run this page, and it will go down here, and the next part for this add says load this and pass over the parameters act equals add and func equals save. So we go down to here, and are those looked at? And they are looked at down here. If is set get act. So this is saying if there is a value called act that has been set in memory, then start running this statement here. Then what I'm doing is I'm assigning the value that's in that variable to a new variable. That simply means that I can work with it quite easily. I can include it into echo statements or other things if I wish to. And all I've done with this is switched on the switch here, and the switch simply says take the action, select the relevant case. Well, we know the case for this one because it says act is equal to add. So this comes down to here and says okay, case equal to add, and what you've got to do is got to include the add pages, so the very page that actually did the calling is being called or included, and then the break tells it to stop the switch. So it calls itself. Well, that means that this part here, this func equals save, hasn't actually been used yet, and that's because of the new code at the top. Remember, an include makes the whole page one long page, so this add becomes part of the index page itself. So this actually replaces all of that switch, all this switch part here, all this if gets replaced with this add statement here. Well, actually that's not quite true. The only thing that gets replaced is that line there, but it's that line that gets executed here. So gets to here, and we have a very similar statement. It's checking that the func has been called, and if it has, then it goes down to this if statement and it checks the value of that func, which is save. So is the function save? If it's not, it will simply ignore all that and reload the form again. So I'm only checking to see if you've asked it to save. So even if there was a function set, all that would happen was this if would fail and it would simply load the form again. But if we have given save, and clearly according to this statement we have, then what I do is all those values that are in here. Now let's have a look at this form again. There's my input for the title, and I have given it a name, title. I've given first name, I've given the text box the title first. So when the user actually clicks on the submit button, when they've typed things into these boxes, then what actually happens is there are instances inside the post created with these names and the values entered by the user. So when the user puts something into the first name text box, the marker first is attached to that value, and that's put into memory under this post grouping. So what I can then do is I can actually grab the title that they typed in and I've assigned that to a new variable. That becomes really useful because I can't use this in what we're going to look at. It wasn't so clear when we're looking back here, and I was saying, oh yes, I've assigned it to a variable. To be honest, there's not much purpose except the fact that actually I'd find it very difficult to use that potentially here. It probably would work there, but certainly in this part I know it's not going to. So I take this and I assign it to what we term a local variable. Same thing here. Take the first and assign that to the first variable. Take the last name and assign that to a new variable called $last, and obviously telephone number gets stored to telephone. I'm then running a query. Actually the query is this side, and this is an insert query. So we've had a look at the select query that takes data out of a database. Well, the insert query is a query that puts data into a database. So this is simply saying insert into TBL contacts, that table we created some time back. Insert into this table. These are the field names that we put in the database. So insert into this table using these field names. Now that's all the field names in there, but of course I don't have to use all of them. I am in this case. The only one I've obviously not got is the ID, and that's because it's an auto, so it's going to be automatically incremented. Values, and here's the reason why it's so useful. A, to make sure you've used speech marks at the beginning and at the end, and B, why it's so useful to use these local variables, because I can actually use them in here. Now notice I've got quotes either side. If the value is a string, which they are in all these cases, then I must put quotes around them for it to work. If they're numbers and I want them to be stored as numbers, then the quotes aren't needed. There's a different format for dates and things like that, but you can explore those at your leisure later on. So basically it says insert into this table these fields, these values, and obviously this value here, including the quotes, gets assigned to this field name here. This one gets assigned to this field name here, and so on and so forth. That is actually simply a string. It's not a query at the moment. It looks like a query, but actually all it is the same as saying my name is Duckling. It's a string of letters, numbers, whatever else. It's simply a string, and we're going to assign that to a variable called add query. It's here that it actually becomes a SQL command. It's here it actually gets executed, and this is saying MySQL query, so run this string as a query, and as long as it's been successful, then the result true will be put in here. Now I had a series, when I first built this, I had a series of tests just to flag up what this does. I've cleared those because I don't need them at this stage, but quite simply, as long as that query works, it should always work. So I have this query, it takes that and it puts it into my add result. All this will do is flag up if it's true or false. So if I ever have an error come up, I can check this variable to make sure that this has worked. But all I've done is accepted it, and I'm using this command here to simply reload index.php, but with no additional. It will take you back to the home page. So all this will do is take you back to the home page. And then I have the exit command that takes me out of here and back to where I wanted to be. So it kills this page, stops anything else from executing, otherwise I'd end up with all this appearing again. And that is the add routine. That's it. That adds data to our database. That takes anything the user puts into their form, anything in here. Once they click on add, they will be taken back to this page and they will come across the data on there. It's very, very simple. It's not safe. I will warn you now. There's something called, sorry about the cough, there's something called SQL injection that you've got to worry about. This is not safe. It's not a great way of importing data, but you certainly can. This is perfectly adequate, but you do need to test the values given before you add them to the query. So make sure that this fits within certain boundaries, that your telephone number is a telephone number as much as possible, and so on and so forth. Those are checks and tests that you should be doing, but as a bare bones system, this works fine. We don't go into the testing of these variables. You don't need to, because that's something you can explore and say, right, how do I know that that's going to be Mr., Mrs., or whatever else? Okay, hope that's been useful.